Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Valerie Clay, and I'm going to be presenting to you today the legacy of Thomas Jefferson. Um, there we go. When we were first given this assignment, I was a little perplexed and wasn't really sure which direction to go. I live in Virginia. I live equidistant to the University of Virginia, Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, as well as his retreat at Poplar Forest. I'm about 45 minutes either way to each. And so Thomas Jefferson has been very important in my education. I grew up in this area and he has been revered, he's been reviled, and I was just not really sure how I would go about talking about him. So if you will, I'm going to take you on a journey of how I decided to focus on his legacy, what I felt were the important parts of Jefferson's legacy in which to discuss. Thomas Jefferson was a prolific writer, a very busy man. He was able to accomplish an enormous amount in his lifetime. Now, the times in which he lived, that certainly did help. It was there was a lot of motion involved during the time that he lived, a lot of motion in terms of revolutions and thinking, the Enlightenment thinkers, just an enormous amount of change came out of the late 18th century. He was very busy in Virginia. He was a member of the House of Burgesses. He was a delegate to the Continental Congress, author of the Declaration of Independence. I have many of the things that he accomplished here on the screen. Governor of Virginia, ambassador to France, secretary of state, vice president, president, author of the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, as well as founder of the University of Virginia. But I think we also need to remember that Jefferson, for all the things he did publicly, was also a son, a brother, a husband, a father, a slave owner, and a friend to many. So as I sat back and thought about what his legacy was, I couldn't help but thinking about his headstone. If you've had the opportunity to visit Monticello or studied Jefferson at all, you may know that he designed his own headstone. And he was very specific in what he wanted on this headstone. And I have here on this slide from his manuscripts. You can actually see this particular manuscript. You can go visit it at the Library of Congress. There's an online exhibition. And he wrote in his manuscripts, his journal, that, and he was very specific. He said he would like the following to be my mains most gratifying. On the grave, a plain die or cube of 3 feet, without any moldings, surmounted by an obelisk of 6 feet in height, each of a single stone. On the faces of the obelisk, the following inscription, and not a word more. Here was buried Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, of the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, and father of the University of Virginia. Of all the things that he accomplished in his life, those were the 3 things that he wished to be remembered for. And I decided to follow his, to follow Jefferson and to focus on those 3 things, because the more I thought about it, the more I realized that out of everything that he did, and he was a very busy man. He certainly is probably at this point in the 21st century well known for the fact he was a slave owner and fathered slaves. We sometimes get caught up in our 21st century focus of things that are important to us right now. And by all means, I'm not saying that they are not important. They are important, but they're important to us as members of the 21st century. I wanted to look at Jefferson as a man of the 18th and 19th century, and how the things that he accomplished have affected us in a positive manner through time. So first, He was an author of the Declaration of Independence. As we've studied in class, the original draft, Jefferson's original draft, was much more forceful in its verbiage than the draft that was passed by the Continental Congress. It was a bit much softer in tone, the final draft. However, what Jefferson was saying was still very much a part of the final draft. According to Lewis and I believe it's Onuf, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name, in the article that we had to read this week, they mentioned that Jefferson was similar to a proxy for the nation. And I do believe that the Declaration of Independence does in some way show us, or I shouldn't say show us, it somehow, as the author of the Declaration of Independence, we kind of take Thomas Jefferson, and anytime there are questions about equality, justice, freedom, we pick him up because of his words from the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. We have the right to the pursuit of happiness. There's so many things. And so we look at our nation through this lens of Thomas Jefferson, the man. And I do agree with that, as Lewis and Onuf mentioned in their article. Now, something that I think gets overlooked quite a bit is the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. Jefferson wrote this before the Constitution was written. The Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom was passed in Virginia years before the Constitution came about. Virginia was the first state to separate church and state. And that was done through this statute for religious freedom. It actually came on the heels of Patrick Henry actually was trying to pass a modest tax that would be levied on all citizens for the creation of schools so that religion and reading and writing could be taught. And a lot of people didn't like that. They're coming from a time, remember, Virginia was very much an English colony, and the Anglican Church was very prominent here, the Episcopalian Anglican Church, and they levied, the church, the English church levied taxes or tithes. And so a lot of Virginians were not keen on continuing to pay any money to a religion, any specific religion. And so the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom was able to be passed because really Virginians started to believe that they didn't really feel that they needed to have to spend any money towards or give any money towards any particular religion or even religious education. It is currently in the Virginia State Constitution, the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, and became the model for other states. Finally, I think its biggest gift, Jefferson's largest gift through this statute, was it became a model for the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. So whenever anybody invokes the freedom of religion clause in the First Amendment, they have to think Thomas Jefferson and his words in the Statute for Religious Freedom. It was the first, and it was the model for all religious freedom statutes that came after. Finally, he wanted to be remembered as the father of the University of Virginia. Now, I went to Virginia Tech. I'm a Hokie, but I have a lot of respect for the University of Virginia. I really do. It is an amazing institution. It continues to be an amazing institution. They have over 16,000 students currently, tens of thousands of faculty. They have been educating the young people of Virginia since 1819. And they continue to do so. They not only educate individuals from Virginia, but all across the United States and the world. It was the first public university in Virginia. Up until that point, if you wanted to go to school, you had to pay to go. And most schools were private. The College of William and Mary, you had to pay to go. If your family didn't have money, then you did not go to school. It was that simple. Or you did not go to an institution of higher learning. And Virginia was one of the first to institute a public university. That was because Thomas Jefferson felt that it was very important that all male citizens, at the time, male citizens could attend. If you were a citizen of the state of Virginia, then you had every right to attend the University of Virginia. It was also the first school to have a cross-curricular exchange between science and the humanities, history and chemistry, students and professors. Jefferson felt as though no discipline should be on its own, that they all should work together. And any of us that have studied education understand that that's kind of what education is all about. So that was very, very important. And UVA is a leader in that, and many of our other institutions have followed suit. And Jefferson also, through his university, believed in education as a village. The picture that you see on your screen is an early drawing of the University of Virginia and what it was to look like. You see in the background the rotunda, which is still standing today. And then there were buildings on either side of the rotunda that served as that village. The faculty would live there, the students would live there, the academic buildings were there, and so it would become almost a village of education. And so if a student was studying history, it was not unusual for them to maybe sit and have lunch on the green with the professor of chemistry, and they would talk about that. And he wanted open dialogue when it came to cross-curricular exchange. And we still follow that model today, very much so in our colleges and universities. So I thank everybody for their time today. Again, Thomas Jefferson, I do agree with his headstone. I feel as though the three things that he wanted to be remembered for probably are the strongest for his legacy, and not applying our 21st century values to the 18th and 19th century. Do I think that there is still room for dialogue regarding his relationship with slaves and Sally Hemings? Of course, and I think that is something that we as a culture need to discuss, and we need to continue to discuss. But in terms of legacy, in terms of how he has reached multitudes of people, not just in Virginia, not just in the United States, but across the world, his gift of independence and putting words to what independence means, his gift of religious freedom and putting words to what that means, as well as his gift of education and the hundreds of thousands of people that education has impacted. I do believe that those three things probably are the strongest of his legacy and will continue to live on. Thank you all very much for your time. Have a great day.